Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey everybody, I'm CGDannyB. I'm a content creator focused heavily on indie games. I'm also the co-host for Playlog Podcast, where we talk all things indie gaming, news, reviews, and whatever we choose. And today I am coming back with another episode of Side Quest because I gotta tell you guys about one of my favorite indie game franchises of all time, Monster Prom. Now, I'm recording this on the day that MonsterCon comes out, which is Monster Prom 4, so my excitement levels are pretty high, so bear with me if I start really just rambling and getting excited about this game, but I genuinely love this franchise for everything that it is. If you're sitting there wondering what is Monster Prom, it is this co-op dating sim. You can play it solo, but it's much better with friends. We're trying to improve your stats to take your dream date to the Monster Prom. It takes place in high school, but all the characters are 18 plus, so none of that weird, awkward stuff you gotta deal with. We're all good. There's been a lot of DLC for the game, but the base game has 4 playable characters, which are Vicky, Oz, Brian, and Amira. And then there are 6 dateable characters who are Polly, Damien, Scott, Liam, Vera, and Miranda. And each of these characters has a unique design and characteristics about themselves. For example, Polly, who's easily my favorite, she is a ghost who died during some crazy sex act, and now she is just kind of partying in the afterlife, just taking drugs and drinking. Meanwhile, you have Damien, who is like the Prince of Hell, who is just always out here to cause some mayhem, and everything's fucking metal, mate. Like, these characters are super fun and super unique, and seeing them carry on not just through Prom, but all of the sequels, like, it's fun to see them evolve with their own stories. Now, a single run of Monster Prom can be kind of long, but the way it starts is there's a personality test where you'll take this quiz. They'll ask you all kinds of questions, like, in this circumstance, what would you do for XYZ, blah, 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 blah. You'll pick your answer, and that'll give you a specific stat, which will now increase for the start of the run. You go through a couple of those questions, and then the final question will be like, hey, if you could do this, what would it be? And that is tailored to a specific character. And once you pick that, you'll earn these like love points towards attracting them to you. Now, just because those questions gave you love points towards a certain character does not mean you have to go after them. You'll just have like a head start for it. So please pick your poison. But you know, if you see the question and you're like, that's definitely talking about my little demon man, yeah, it's probably the one you want to go with. It's a lot of stuff to figure out, so please just stick with me. And then once you play the game, it's really just second nature at that point. But it's a lot of numbers to think about that are basically invisible for most of the game. So there's short and long runs for Monster Prom, and essentially the way every day works in this game is split into 3 parts, where there's morning, lunch, and then nighttime. In the morning, you're going to pick a location at Spooky High, and once you go there, you'll complete this visual novel-style conversation, which will either earn you or lose you stats. I'm making one up on the spot here, but if they're like, hey, there's been bees released into the cafeteria, what would you possibly do? There'll be one that's like, I grab the guy who's made out of honey and I put him in the middle of the room, or I open a vent to make sure everyone can escape and blah, 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 blah. So those options might be boldness or smarts, depending on how you look at it. Well, I guess it's more how the game looks at it. And I think that's probably my favorite part of it, is trying to discern what the game decides for itself and what you think it is, and then figuring how far off you are when it actually comes to making a decision. But with those 2 options, you want to pick the one that best suits your stats. So if you have a higher boldness stat and they're like, hey, you want to take the guy made of honey and put him in the middle of the room as a distraction, then that's the one you want to go with. Because if you take the smarts one and that's lower, you're going to end up losing stats based on that choice you made. Again, the first time through this is going to be kind of confusing because there's not really a bullet point like this is what you get until you make your choice. And I think that all comes with figuring out how this game is written and kind of finding its sense of humor to then stick through and later be like, got it. With their sense of humor, this would be this kind of thing, or this would be this stat in particular. But with that said, this really becomes a game of intuition at that point, where taking whatever situation is happening and deciding which decision best fits your stats, which ones you can handle, which ones are going to help you get the date that you need, and then doing that over and over again. Now, there are a crap ton of wiki guides and Steam forum things that'll tell you what characters want what stats, and here are all the options. If you have this stat, you want to do that. Personally, I'm a big fan of figuring it out on my own and just seeing what the experience is, because even when you don't get your date, you still can get special endings, or you get those unique things to unlock in the art gallery. So I still say go through and play the game at your own pace. So yeah, have fun with that. So once you go through your first part of the day, you end up at lunchtime, where you're going to be in this cafeteria full of lunchroom tables with all the different dateable character options available to you. Now, you're still going to have a visual novel conversation type deal here, but instead of picking decisions based on your stats, you're going to pick the one that best suits that character. So say, for example, you sit at a table that has Vera and Miranda, and they're fighting over hierarchy and royalty versus financial execution. Something. Listen, one's a princess, one likes money. That's the conversation those two are going to be having. But once you go over and they're like, hey, we can't figure out what we want to do. Player, what would you do? You'll see one that's like, hey, I think if Vera did this, that'd be pretty smart. Or, oh, if Miranda did this, that'd be pretty cool. And you know whichever one you take is going to influence that character more and give them those love points you got at the beginning of the game to help further the relationship with them. Again, there's some other great conversations to be had throughout the game. I've not found them super complicated when it comes to really picking which character you want. There's a few that are like, oh, you want to bully the opposite character, so you got to pay attention a little bit for that. But this is pretty easy to just get free points. Or if you're not necessarily looking to get more points with a character, there is a shopkeep, and you can go there and she will sell you items that can boost your stats or trade stats for other stats or unlock secret endings. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can get from the shop to really unlock more endings for this game. Now, if you're playing solo, this is a pretty easy spot to deal with. You just kind of go where you want. Now, if you're playing in co-op, however, that's where you might have to fight your friends to get the right table. The order you pick your tables in is what player order you are. So player 1 goes first, player 2, et cetera, et cetera. And then as you go into the lunchroom, there's a chance to randomly select or play a little mini game to help decide the new order. We usually do random because it's just easier and quicker. But once you have that new order, your friend might go and be like, I want this table. But if the character your friend's trying to date and you're trying to date are sitting at the same table, you can't sit there after him and have a conversation with your date. So it gets a little bit cutthroat if you want to be like that. Or this, again, where you go to the shop or have another conversation with another character and try and romance someone else. Your game can change on the fly in Monster Prom. Once you complete your lunch date, you're moving on to nighttime, which is a duplicate of what you would do in the morning. You're picking a location, you're getting the stat boost, you're having the conversation, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you finish the night, you start over on a brand new day, do it all over again. And you repeat this process 3 days in a row, trying to build up your courage to ask your crush to prom. This is where your heart starts to race because you spend sometimes 2-3 hours. Our games have gone up to 4 or 5 because it's us being goofy and voice acting and having a fun time with joking about these characters and the things they're doing. But you spend all of this time trying to build a relationship, hoping you can dodge your friends to get the things that you need to walk in, pick the character that you want, and hope that they say yes to you. And then they just absolutely reject you with the middle finger to your face like, psych, you're dumb, get away from me. Which, again, is a fun ending to get. You get extra key art for it, but it sucks to put a lot of time into it. But it still feels rewarding, I guess. I wish I knew the way to describe it, because in no universe is getting rejected by your crush the way you want everything to end. But in Monster Prom, there's just a new way of looking at it and saying, I could do it all over again in a brand new way, trying to do the same thing with different goals in mind. Now, for me, my favorite thing about Monster Prom as a series is its sense of humor. It is so aggressive and it's sexual and violent. And depending on which character you're speaking to, you'll see more and more of one or another type of topic show up. But you have characters like Polly, who are so sex driven, and she has a secret ending called the Reverse Romanian Wilkinson, where she's like, hey, I'm dead, but I want to come back to life. And the only way I can do that is by having sex in this very specific situation that I need you to get all the stuff for. So you spend your 3 days going to the shop, getting the penguin mask, having the conversations, earning the extra boldness points for Polly. By the time you get to the end, you have this key art of, I did it. I got the event. And she's like, oh, I guess it didn't work. I mean, spoilers, but you get this special ending. Nothing changes in terms of Polly's life, but you still get the achievement of doing this unique ending. And you have these endings for Scott and Liam and all these different characters, and everyone's going to have to pick their own poison of who their main crush is. I know in my friend group, we have someone who's a huge fan of Damien. He always goes after Damien, or maybe Damien always goes after him. I think his stats just tend to line up fairly well with that. But then you continue on throughout this game finding DLC characters where there's Dahlia, who's like a big blue demon who's always beefing with Damien, or you have Calculester, who is a sentient computer who doesn't quite understand organic life forms, and he's trying to understand by raising plants. So there's all these fun and adorable characters that you fall in love with as you play through Monster Prom. And I could sit here for hours talking about how much I love Monster Prom proper, but there are now 3 sequels and a 5th one is on the way, and I gotta tell you about those real quick. So Monster Prom was the first game. You could play that on all platforms, Steam, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox. Then they introduced Monster Camp, which is the same general idea, except it's over summer vacation. They kept some of the same characters, but swapped out for others. So you're introduced to Milo, who is like the Grim Reaper, but he's also like an Instagram influencer who likes to take pictures of everything. You have characters like Aravi, who is a side character in the first game, but she is out to kill all of the monsters and the demons. Now she's a dateable option who has been cursed with Hex, who is like a little Mountain Dew drinking ghost cloud that kind of hovers around her at all times. So there's always new interesting characters to look forward to as more games come out. Now, after Camp, you have Monster Road Trip, which is the most unique in all of the Monster Prom games, because instead of trying to date a character, your whole goal is to go on a road trip with Scott and Polly and try and reach one of your destinations without any of your stats hitting 0. Still, you have the same visual novel conversations of, I reached a point, we talk, I said the thing, oops, I lost some stats, oops, I gained some stats. I guess that's not an oops, that's a good thing. But you play through the game like that, hoping to reach one of the secret endings by getting a high enough stat when you hit that final road marker. And I think this game is super unique. I know a lot of people who like Monster Prom don't love Road Trip just because it's so different from the other games. But I think Road Trip is a fun departure from the main game and the main gameplay loop that you now get to experience in a brand new light with the same lovable characters. And now, of course, the whole reason I'm talking about this game is because we got MonsterCon, and this is a return to form where you're still doing the mini dates, but you were at a anime convention. We were trying to convince one of the dateable characters to go with you to the anime convention after party. And this brings back Liam and Zoe. Liam, who I believe, generally speaking, is one of the least popular love interests in the game, but we've not seen him as much since Monster Prom. So this is kind of the first time we're getting to see Liam again in quite some time. And then we have Zoe, who was one of the DLC secret ending characters from the first game. But then we have 4 brand new characters, which is Omen, who is a evil goddess Iron Maiden who is trying to rehabilitate herself and not stab people. You have Nico, who is a mimic, and his whole thing is he's not into changing his form. He just likes to cosplay different things. So that's how they still do the whole mimic bit. You have April, who is a micro celebrity who has to portray her personalities through little personified balloon animal characters. And then you have Doug, who is this anthropomorphic slime dude who's just like, I like dorky things, and he just loves to get collectibles. All these new characters are so great and so fun. I've played probably about 8-9-ish hours of Monster Prom at the time of recording this video, and I am so excited to see how much more there is to dive into in this brand new game. And we already know we're getting Monster Prom 5, which is going to be Retreat, where you are playing on 2 separate teams where it's either Vera or Miranda, and they're competing in a giant snowball fight. And your whole goal is to recruit different members, have them join your team, and hopefully have the stronger team to beat the other one. We've only seen a trailer for this one, so we don't have a lot of details on how it's going to play, but I think it looks super fun. And it's Monster Prom, so I'm gonna dive in. Now, I know this episode was a lot more of me just giving you a tutorial of how this game would function, but I could sit here for hours and hours and hours and tell you about how cool these character interactions are, how deep some of them feel. And I mentioned how goofy and silly and aggressive it is, but even sometimes there's these really dramatic, like, oh, I'm feeling for this character. Like, for example, in Road Trip, which is Monster Prom 3, there is a new extended ending for Polly, which I've yet to play myself because you have to do like a really long run, and I just haven't taken the time to do it. But it's a very like emotionally taxing looking trailer from what I've seen. So I need to get to that and see what it's all about. But Monster Prom, great franchise. I think a lot of people who aren't interested in dating sims should give this one a shot, because I think it gives you a new perspective on what the genre is. And even if it doesn't make you love dating sims proper, I think you could then have a dating sim that you do like, and it's Monster Prom. One you could play with your friends, maybe not your family. I guess depends how cool your family is. It's a little raunchy for that. But guys, Monster Prom, it's the vibe. But guys, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of SideQuest Podcast. If you guys enjoy listening to me ramble about video games and you want to hear me do some more of it, you can find me at CGDannyB on YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, and Blue Sky. I'm always posting on those, talking about upcoming indie game releases, my reviews on upcoming games. If you want to check out Playlog Podcast, which drops every Thursday, we're always doing the news, reviews, whatever we choose on all the fun indie game stuff you can talk about. And we stream over on Twitch on Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, all kinds of different stuff. And we're going to try and get back to our regular monthly streams of Monster Prom games. So if you want to stay tuned for that and see what the game is really about, be sure to check me out on Twitch as well. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, happy gaming.
Do you have a gaming subscription service like Xbox Game Pass or a crazy backlog and don't know what to play next? Well, 1H1D might be for you. Join me, Chris, and my college buddy Tom as we play a random game or a requested game for an hour and decide if it's worth playing past that hour. We go over the good, the bad, and maybe some little tidbits about the development you might not have known. Got 30 minutes? Give us a try, and if you like it, throw us a 5-star review. Try something new. You never know what might be your next favorite game.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.